is extending the public comment period for its proposal to make public companies disclose climate-related risks, with the agency citing significant interest in the proposal. Let's bring in Yahoo Finance's Alexis Keenan, who's covering this story for us today. And Alexis, these are rules that were first laid out in March. Where do things stand right now?
Hi, Akiko. Yes, so essentially getting another month here on the time for public comment on this proposal. The period is now set to end June 17th instead of May 20th. Now, SEC Chair Gary Gensler said that there was significant interest in this change, and that's the reason for this extension. We'll have to see if it will get extended any further beyond that June 17th date. And the idea behind it is to give stakeholders in public companies insight into both environmental risks as well as opportunities in that space. In theory, it would standardize the risk profile between companies, and practice that's really already been adopted in the UK, in Japan, in New Zealand, and is also in the works in Europe right now. On the other hand, critics say that the SEC already requires climate disclosures, and they say that that's by requiring disclosure of material risks. Also, they say that the change wouldn't really lead to that standardization that the SEC is seeking, and that the SEC actually lacks authority to adopt these types of new laws. Commissioner Hester Price, for her part, she's a Republican in the agency. She said that the proposal really tells corporate managers how regulators expect them to run their companies. She says it positions regulators instead as doing the bidding of an array of non-investor stakeholders. So let's take a look briefly at what these new rules would require and some of the details that are still to be worked out. Basically, it would require both domestic and foreign filers, public companies, to report, for one, material climate-related risks. Essentially, that's the impact on the company's operations and financial conditions. Also, to explain the company's governance, how it identifies and manages climate risks. Greenhouse gas emission levels, they would have to disclose that. That's a big one. And the scope, there are 3 different kind of silos in which are being discussed, like how extensive these companies would have to report. Would they have to report just their own operations and the emissions from those? Would they have to also report the power that they're purchasing and using for their operations? Or would they also have to add in downstream supply chain energy that they're using? That's a big one there. A lot of discontent about that one. Also targets, goals, and transition plans of decarbonization and some financial metrics. These would all be audited financial statements that would be tied to the company's climate-related projections. Lots of legal challenges, of course, expected here, but there's going to be some more time for the public to weigh in.
Yeah, reporting of those downstream emissions certainly significant when you consider a majority of those emissions come from Scope 3. You mentioned, Alexis, that other countries have already adopted these regulations. They've got disclosure rules in place. The U.S. is a little behind, but even with that, a lot of companies saying, look, it's going to cost a lot more. It's going to require a lot more time. What do we know about how well prepared public companies are for these measures?
So one company, a management consulting firm, Bain & Company, they did an analysis and they found that those who responded, these companies that they reached out to, that 50% of them said they're not equipped to measure these ESG outcomes or to effectively report performance metrics. They also said that approximately 67% had no ESG management plan or were just beginning to start to formulate those types of plans. So this is really a wide-ranging impact if these rules, regardless of whether they're adopted in their current form or whether there's some tweaking done along the way. There's 500 and some pages in this proposal, so this is a lot for corporations to digest. But it looks like in the U.S. at least that corporate executives, particularly the CFOs, aren't really ready for these changes to take effect.
Yeah, yet another reason why we're seeing that this public comment period has been extended. Alexis Keenan, thanks so much for that.